Hey guys, Lex here. A few of you have been asking what build I've been running the Greatsword of Solitude with, and I recently respec'd to go all in on this weapon, so in this video I'm going to go over what makes this weapon so good in PvP and PvE, the crystal tiers I typically run with this thing, the talismans, my stats and gear, my whole setup, etc. Yeah. Let's get into it. So first things first, this is a strength weapon through and through. It has a bit of dex scaling, but you definitely don't want to pump points into dex if you're trying to get this thing to hit hard. It's definitely meant for pure strength builds. When fully upgraded, this thing gets an A scaling in strength, which obviously isn't S, but honestly the damage added is still sort of insane, and it pretty much feels like an S scaling weapon anyway. Aside from that, it comes with the standard Greatsword moveset, which is fine. I mean, I wish it had some poke attacks, which would make this thing absolutely perfect in my eyes, but maybe it would be a little overpowered. But you know, hey, it's still my favorite weapon of the DLC so far. As far as some of the other stats goes, it has an unusually high guard boost at 58, with 89% physical damage reduction. That's pretty huge for just a greatsword. I mean, the Giant Crusher, which is a colossal weapon, one of the biggest, most stable weapons in the game, has 88 physical damage reduction. So it actually blocks more damage than the Giant Smasher when you're blocking with two hands. This means that it's basically like a medium shield, so you should use this thing like a medium shield and be blocking things and guard countering. You'll see how strong guard countering really is with this weapon in some upcoming footage, paired along with a certain crystal tier. Other than that, it's a bit on the heavier side as far as greatswords go at 15.5 weight. I think that actually makes it the heaviest greatsword in the game, but you know, that I'm used to playing with colossal weapons. That just means you'll have to chuck some extra points into endurance if you want to use this thing. The Ash of War, which is called Solitary Moon Slash, is very strong. I'd break it down as having 4 parts and 2 steps. So during the first part of the animation, you charge up your sword and you swing it down to shoot a projectile, which it's very hard for PvE to dodge. It's similar to Vacuum Slice if you've used that Ash of War. It's really, really good. I've tested this on a bunch of different PvE, including Melania, and knowing how dodgy she is, she didn't dodge a single slash from this first part of the Ash of War. So it's really fast. It's going to be really hard for PvE to dodge it. There's also a melee component to this first swing, so you can deal a lot of damage and poise damage if you connect both the melee swing and the projectile. So after the initial swing, there's a charging horizontal slash that once again does a ton of poison physical damage. What's interesting is that the charge part of this attack has its own little hit stun that doesn't do any damage but will stagger PvE and players alike. In PvP, this does not lead to a true combo with the slash that comes right after, but in PvE this is often very useful since you can stagger something mid-attack and then hit them immediately after with the slash. So you've probably noticed the shotgun of a crossbow in my offhand by now. Yeah, I'm running the spread crossbow because it has some insane status buildup, which is unfortunately something the Greatsword of Solitude lacks, you know, being a somber weapon and all. You can't apply any greases to it, you can't infuse it with Ashes of War and give any status effects to it, etc. The spread crossbow feels very strong. I've been running this over the repeating crossbow just because I feel like the instant 10-bolt shot is more instantly punishing than the repeating Ash of War on the other crossbow, which has a heavy FP cost, requires 2 hands to use, a significant stamina cost, and is easier to dodge in PvP, etc. There's just a bunch of reasons why I don't like it. I think the only real advantage the repeating crossbow has over this one is the range, but hey, maybe I'm wrong and you guys have found a better use for the repeating crossbow. Let me know in the comments which one you think is better. Anyways, I find the spread crossbow very strong in PvE, especially against large targets where most or all of the bolts can hit from mid-range. I've been mostly using the bird bolts you can buy from that merchant in the Dynasty Mausoleum that I totally didn't murder for his inconvenient location, and have been able to proc bleed on some bosses in 2 shots. You can obviously ensure more bolts by being point blank, but in my experience there seems to be a hard cap on the amount of bolts that can hit and damage an enemy. It seems to be around 5 or 6, maybe 7. I guess FromSoft foresaw this being overpowered at close range, so they put some guardrails on it. This means that even if you shoot at mid-range and miss a few bolts, it's not a big deal because a few shots will miss anyway, even if you're point blank. In PvE, I ultimately just love using this thing to pepper tough bosses down a bit at range before fighting them with the Greatsword, or vice versa. Sometimes Phase 2 is so tough I choose to save like the ranged bleed as an option for later in the fight. Anyways, this build isn't centered around this crossbow, but it still is super useful all the while, which is why I've been using it alongside the Greatsword of Solitude. As far as crystal tiers for your Flask of Physick, I've honestly found a lot of success with one of the newer ones introduced in the DLC, which would be the Deflecting Hard tier. For those of you who don't know how this works, if you time your block, sort of like you would a parry, you can perfect block most attacks in the game, which means you have minimal recovery time, no stamina loss. It seems like you take no damage on a perfect block as well. This lends well to guard counters, which I highly recommend spamming with this weapon. I also tend to run the Stone Barb Cracked tier alongside this because the guard counters and the Ash of War already do a ton of poise damage to PvE. And it's good to do even more, especially against bosses and big mobs. For PvP, I swap out the Stone Barb Cracked tier for the Crimson Bubble tier, because the free heal near death can save you, but I've been running the Deflecting Hard tier here as well. You'd be surprised at how many people are not expecting these guard counters, and they are great to pull off in the middle of someone trying to R1 spam you or something, since the guard counter will win that trade. Then you can follow up with the Ash of War, with, to varying levels of success. Sometimes you can combo somebody down if they're low on stamina. Other than that, though, I mean, the Greatsword moveset is just solid as hell in PvP, and the Ash of War can be used for big combo damage or even just as a ranged harass. It's super versatile. As far as talismans go for PvP, I run the Bullgoat's talisman for high poise. You can see I have 128 poise there. I think that's just past the 127. I think 127 is a threshold for spears. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but you won't flinch if you get hit by spears if you have past 127 poise. So, pretty popular weapon type, pretty good breakpoint to have. I run the Erdtree's Favor +2 just for a little bit of everything, a little bit of health, stamina, equip load, very important for this build. The Greatjar's Arsenal is the third talisman I run, just extra equip load because I want to wear this very tanky armor, and obviously for Fashion Souls purposes. And the fourth talisman is the Shard of Alexander. For obvious reasons, you just greatly boost the attack power of your Ash of War, which is really strong already on this weapon. Just kind of want to capitalize on that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, I will sometimes swap out the Bullgoat's talisman for a 2 Fingers heirloom, because I'm using the Frenzied Flame Seal, and I can just cast, Flame Cleanse Me, or oops, I don't have any FP, but I can use both those spells, Bestial Vitality or Flame Cleanse Me, whatever the situation calls for, and then I'll just swap it back. PvE is a bit different. I find I don't need the Bullgoats quite as much, so I'll often have the Crimson Dagger equipped instead, just for some free healing if I'm progressing through a new area. It has really good synergy with the inevitably a high amount of poise breaking you'll be doing from all the guard counters and the Ash of War. I can also see a world where you run the Dagger Talisman, the Curved Sword Talisman, if you particularly love the amount of poise breaking you're doing, or want to capitalize more on the guard counters themselves. I think another consideration for me is the Two-Handed Sword Talisman, which I don't have yet, but it just gives you a flat 15% more damage when two-handing. So I mean, why not, Unfortunately, this doesn't apply to Ashes of War, and it doesn't give you 15% damage against players. I think it's somewhat less, like 6 or 7%. But hey, I'd still probably use it instead of Bullgoats as well. Alright, so let's go over the stats. This character is the hero starting class, and I'm now at rune level 138 for more active PvP, which means I definitely want around 60 vigor at minimum. After that, we can go ahead and hit the 60 strength soft cap, seeing as this is a strength build. I know you can technically level to around 54 strength and hit the soft cap when two-handing this weapon, but it scales fairly well even after 54, so I went ahead and leveled it up to 60. You might be able to throw a few more points into there because this build offers a little bit of flexibility, as most Elden Ring builds do. We have 17 dexterity is the minimum we need to use that spread crossbow, 40 endurance, so we have a bunch of stamina and obviously weight load to carry this tanky set. I threw an extra 2 points in there because I wanted to, though you could probably throw those extra 2 points, somewhere else like health, probably more useful. I leveled Mind up to 12 for some extra FP, for more weapon arts, or Ashes of War, sorry, and that's pretty much it. You don't have to use the spread crossbow if you don't want to, and obviously you can free up those 4 points to throw around wherever. I feel like, again, most builds aren't super strict, but I feel like the essentials here are the vigor, strength, 13 dex for the Greatsword, and again, around 40-ish endurance. So those are the big ones. But yeah, that's pretty much the build. I know a few of you have been asking for it, so here it is. Thank you for watching this video. I'm streaming my first playthrough of the Elden Ring DLC pretty much every weeknight around 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on YouTube. So if you are interested, please come hang out, and if not, that's fine too. I'm just glad you watched the video. I hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, that's going to be it. Till next time.